Hi everyone. This tutorial covers the setup wizards available in the dialog system for Unity. 3 wizards are available in Window, Dialog System, Tools, Wizards: the Dialog Manager wizard, NPC Setup, and Player Setup. The Dialog Manager wizard sets up the Dialog Manager. If a Dialog Manager object doesn't exist, it will be automatically created for you in the current scene. The first step is to assign an initial database. Next, we need to assign a Dialog UI. Let's use the Nuke UI, which is located in Dialog System, Prefabs, Unity Dialog UIs, Nuke. If you use localization, you can set the default language here. We'll skip this for now. These are your subtitle options. NPC subtitles during line shows subtitle text while the NPC is delivering a line. With response menu, shows the same text while the response menu is visible to remind the player what he or she is responding to. PC subtitles shows subtitle text while the PC is delivering a line. If you use menu text that's different from dialog text, for example a shorter paraphrase in the menu text, you probably want to tick this. Chars per second and min seconds determine how long the subtitle text is shown. It also affects the speed of the typewriter effect if your UI uses it. If your UI uses a continue button to require the player to click it to progress past lines, tick this. And if you want emphasis tags to be converted to rich text, tick rich text. Your UI system has to support rich text in this case. The Unity GUI system does. You can set up cutscene sequencer options on this tab. If you've set up a custom camera or camera angle object, assign them here. If you leave these blank, they'll just use the defaults. The default sequence is used whenever a dialog entry doesn't define its own cutscene sequence. The initial default sequence does close-ups of the participants. If you're using a first-person controller that doesn't have a body, this won't make sense, since the player doesn't have a body to do a close-up on. In this case, you can select Wait for Subtitle to just delay the proper amount of time without moving the camera. Or you can enter a custom sequence here. We'll go back to close-ups. The next tab covers the player response menu. Always Force menu shows the response menu even if the player only has one choice. If unticked, the UI will auto-select the choice without showing the menu. Tick Timer to put a time limit on the response menu. For example, 10 seconds. QuickTime events are the subject of a different tutorial. For now, just notice that you can set up QTE buttons on the Dialog Manager object. The cancel key and button name specify what input cancels the response menu. By default, alerts won't pop up in conversations, which might clutter the screen. You can tick this to make it pop up in conversations. If you tick Monitor Alerts, a separate process will run that automatically monitors the alert variable. You normally don't need this since the dialog system checks the alert variable at the end of every conversation. But if you set alert manually elsewhere and you want it to show up on screen, you may want to tick this. And finally, here's a summary of your Dialog Manager. Now let's set up Private Heart, our NPC. First, assign Private Heart, and then assign the dialog database containing his conversations. Usually this is the same database that you assigned to the Dialog Manager. If the NPC has a conversation, tick this, select it, and specify how that conversation gets triggered. We'll use the onUse message. If the NPC has barks, you can set them up here. In this case, we'll just use Sergeant Graves' barks. And it'll be triggered on trigger enter, so that when the player enters Private Heart's static trigger collider area, Private Heart will bark. You can also set up barks to happen automatically on a timed basis. In order to show barks, an NPC needs a bark UI. We'll just click the button to add the default Unity GUI bark UI. You can assign a different one, such as InGUI or DFGUI, by selecting the NPC and adding it manually. Since our conversations are triggered by onUse, we need to add a collider that the player's selector can find, and a usable component to tell the selector that this is a valid target to send onUse messages to. You can then customize the usable component. If you're using the save load system, tick this to allow the NPC to record its position into the Lua environment. And this is a summary of our NPC. Finally, let's set up the player. First, assign the player object. And then you can use one of the Dialog System's built-in control systems or leave it custom to use your own. We'll select third-person shooter, which is an over-the-shoulder view. Follow mouse clicks is for a top-down view like Diablo. If you select either of these, then you'll need to assign legacy animations. Just need to locate the animations. And these are the only two for the third-person shooter that are absolutely required. You can configure the selector on this tab. Since we're using third person, let's target NPCs by the center of the screen. When the player is in a conversation, it's usually important to keep him from running around and controlling the camera. To do this, tick Disable Gameplay Components. It'll pick up the default components that need to be temporarily disabled during conversations. If you need to add more, such as your own custom control components, click Select Player. If you tick Show Mouse Cursor during conversations, it will guarantee that the mouse cursor is visible. As with NPCs, PCs can record their position for the save load system. And this is a summary of our player object. And that concludes the wizard tutorial. Thank you for watching.